Welcome back to The Real Story. Overnight, Ukraine launched what is reportedly the largest ever drone attack on Russia, killing 3 people and injuring 18 more. Over 330 drones were fired by Ukraine into 10 different regions in Russia, and about 334 of them were shot down by Russian troops. Only hours after this drone attack, one Ukrainian official claimed that Ukraine was ready to do everything to achieve peace, as the U.S. and Ukrainian delegations meet in Saudi Arabia to talk about finally ending this horrific war once and for all. But while peace talks are being held, some people that are close to the situation don't think it's a good idea to align with Russia or give them any respite. And that includes Vice President J.D. Vance's own cousin, Nate Vance, who spoke to CNN on Monday.
I don't think there's any scenario where like if this war pauses and sanctions are lifted, Russia has spent the last 3 years kind of beefing up their military-industrial complex, and if you lift those sanctions, you're going to see a massive influx of funds into that military-industrial complex, and they're going to build a war machine out of it, right? That's what they're going to do. And the concept of an imperialistic, aggressive, modernized military Russia who has learned their lessons about modern combat is problematic for our future. And if the Russians are given significant concessions in this ceasefire, they will spin that as a victory of sorts. But their view is they're not done. So to them, it's just a chance to regroup, build up and modernize, and they'll come back. And when they do come back, they'll be more of a problem than they are now. Right now, they're at the weakest they will ever be. As soon as the ceasefire starts, they will immediately start to get stronger and continue to get stronger every day thereafter. So the way this ends is important.
Nate Vance has served as a Marine, and since he was on the front lines in Ukraine for nearly 3 years, he believes that he has an inside perspective that most Americans don't have, and that he has seen Russian military leaders shoot their own soldiers for retreating. But his comments were arguably naive nonetheless. And as peace talks continue, some say it seems like a peace negotiation has never been closer. U.S. officials have made it very clear they expect substantial progress this week as those discussions continue. So only one question remains. Is Russia ready for a peace agreement? Here with reaction is military defense attorney Davis Younts. Davis, thank you for joining me.
Always an honor, sir.
So I have a lot of questions for you, but I do want to get your thoughts about that take from J.D. Vance's cousin.
I think it's terribly naive, and I don't even begin to understand it. Why isn't the priority ending this war? And if the issue that he's talking about, and he seems to be advocating for an ongoing war with Russia, then that makes this a proxy war. I mean, that's what's astounding to me about those comments. Are we engaged in warfare with Russia, and are we just doing it through Ukraine or not? And I think that's problematic. So I think, it just anything he said should give us cause to step back and just wonder, where is he coming from on that? Because we are not currently at war at Russia. Congress has not declared war on Russia. We've stated we don't want to be at war with Russia. Russia is not at war with us currently. And so those are the concerns that are raised by those comments. I think they seem horribly disconnected unless we're in fact at war with Russia.
Okay, well, that's a good point to make. Now, on that note, though, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we are antagonizing a nuclear-armed state. Russia has more warheads than any country on Earth. I'm not pro-Russia. I'm not pro-Ukraine. I'm pro-peace and the American people. But I do find it a little concerning that so many people seem to be very eager about running the risk of not only World War III possibly, but also a nuclear-armed conflict, if not still a direct conflict with Moscow. I mean, what do you make of that? Because so many people for so long in this country have been, I think we've learned through recent history that foreign wars, it's pick your battles wisely, right? We've seen that in the Middle East. It's been very costly for Americans in terms of human life and also finances and resources. So why is it that people are so eager right now to continue this war when it's just getting so many people killed and really it's not serving the American people?
Right. I mean, the first question we have to ask as a people is what is in the interest in the United States? And we should be engaging in just war, and we shouldn't be supporting ongoing, never-ending conflicts without a clear end state. But listen, part of the problem is that we have allowed the military-industrial complex, what Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address, to build up to such a point. It feels like there is a part of the American economy, it feels like there's a part of Washington, D.C. that wants us at war with all times. It's like they have to have a boogeyman, 1984 style, for us to go after. And we need to step back and say, when was the last time Congress actually declared war? It was World War II, and we have otherwise been engaged in these, police keeping operations, these police state actions all over the world, and haven't until now even gotten serious about securing our own border. So the first question is, who benefits from unending wars and the death of people in foreign nations? It's the military-industrial complex. We have to be very careful about that. I am not pro-Russian, and I am certainly pro a robust national security for the United States, but we need to be realistic about these things. And that's the question, who benefits from forever wars? It's not the American people.
I also want to ask you about the role of European nations in this. They're stepping up more. Keir Starmer is all about, I guess, funding Ukrainian defense. But what's interesting is just last year they paid maybe $18 billion toward Ukraine in total. At the same time, they're buying up oil and gas from Russia, which helps them fund this war. So as far as I'm concerned, and maybe I'm wrong here, but it looks like a lot of European countries are funding both sides of this battle. And I find that very perplexing. And I want to get your thoughts about that, Davis.
Well, it is very perplexing, but it goes back to this question of who is really benefiting from this conflict, and do these European nations even realistically care about what's happening in Ukraine? Do they even care about the European people? I mean, the Ukrainian people. Because you're absolutely right. It's a question of why are they buying natural gas and other resources from Russia, and then giving sort of lip service, sort of small tokens to Ukraine that aren't really helping, and just counting on the United States to do it. And quite frankly, it feels like they just want the United States to continue to fund NATO, to continue to fund these forever wars, because it benefits them, and then they can still benefit from Russian natural resources. It does not appear to be a consistent policy at all, and it appears duplicitous.
Okay. I also want to get your take on the peace talks. I mean, we have massive drone attacks happening now in Russia. It seems like every day there's a new tit for tat happening on the battlefield. At the same time, there are officials talking about ending this conflict. So I'm just a little confused, and I'm trying to figure out, are we really close to peace? Maybe not so much. I mean, one day we hear from Zelensky, he's ready for it. The next day he says, we're very, very far away from a deal with Russia. So what do you make of all of this?
So I think we have to look at where we're at now in the context of the Biden administration's foreign policy, as well as what happened when Zelensky visited the White House. Because of Biden's weak, feckless foreign policy without clear guidelines and just really unlimited funding for Ukraine, Zelensky felt empowered to keep this war going on and on and on. And then leading up to his visit to the White House, he was clearly getting bad advice for someone. And if all you're doing is watching American mainstream media and only getting advice from, neocons or Democratic leaders, which I fear may have been what Zelensky was relying on, he underestimated Trump and Vice President Vance. He underestimated the strength of their foreign policy. So he came into that meeting thinking he was in a stronger position than he was, and he had to learn a lesson. And so again, partially Biden is to blame for that. The American mainstream media is to blame for that. The neocons are to blame for that. He just didn't understand where he's at. Now I think he has a clear picture. He is not in a position of strength. Ukraine has no choice. With American funding stopped, they cannot sustain this war forever. They're going to eventually lose at tremendous cost of life. So there is blood on the hands of people. This could have ended. This could have ended when Zelensky was in D.C. The blood is on the hands of the mainstream media in America that are propping him up, and on those in the Democratic Party and some neocons in the Republican Party that want to see this war ongoing for whatever reason. They're the ones that enabled Zelensky, unfortunately.
It is unfortunate. Really, it is. I mean, think of all the lives that have been lost, all the environmental destruction that's gone over there, and really, for what? Now, I do want to ask you, just on that note, Davis, final question for you. With these negotiations going on, how do you see things playing out?
So I see us going back to 2014. We'll go back to 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea and they held Crimea. And I think there will be some other territorial concessions that Ukraine will have to make. Now, there may be a buffer zone. They may be, self-determination for some of those provinces that, primarily speak Russian. Again, I'm not a Russian apologist, but many of those people would rather be a part of Russia than Ukraine if they had a free election. So I think, some sort of negotiated settlement where there is a land deal, there's a buffer zone, as well as some sort of self-determination, I think is what's going to be pushed for. And I think that's where we can get to a resolution.
Okay, understood. Well, I do appreciate the analysis and the insight today, Davis. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
It's left to men like Davis Younts to fight for these Navy SEALs.
Are Davis Younts, you are an attorney who has successfully defended naval officer.
Davis Younts has been instrumental in defending service members.
Davis Younts successfully defended an evangelical Navy lieutenant.